The silence in the Alpine Peak stronghold was absolute, and for King Kale, it was a prison. He stood on the stone balcony, the winter moon bleaching the midnight peaks silver, but its ancient song did not calm the beast inside him. His wolf, a colossal shadow in his soul, paced on a razor's edge. Power thrummed in his veins. A kingdom rested securely on his shoulders, yet a profound, hollow ache echoed in the space where a mate's heartbeat should be. He was an alpha without an anchor, a king without a queen. The council whispered about alliances, about strength, but their words were dust. His soul howled for its missing piece. Down in the valley, shrouded by the tall pines of the neighboring Moonwater Pack, lived the reason for his restlessness. Sage and Willow, twin Omegas. Their names were a sigh on the wind that always found him. That night, a scent did find him. Not on the wind, but in the blood. It was a tremor, a sudden, sweet, piercing melody of jasmine and rain-kissed earth that slammed into his senses with the force of a physical blow. He gripped the balcony rail, granite cracking under his fingers. His wolf surged forward, a single, deafening thought echoing in his skull. Mine. In a small, sun-warmed cottage at the edge of Moonwater territory, Sage jolted awake, a gasp trapped in her throat. Her hand flew to her chest. Beside her, in their shared bed, Willow stirred, her eyes a mirror of Sage's own deep forest, green fluttering open. "You felt it too," Willow whispered, her voice hushed with awe. A warmth, fierce and tender, had bloomed between them, a third heartbeat syncing with their own. It was a pressure, a presence, both terrifying and beautiful. They rose as one, moving to the window. Their connection, the unique twin bond that allowed them to share feelings and quiet thoughts, hummed with a new, foreign energy. It was dark, potent, and tasted of pine and winter sky. "It's him," Sage breathed, her fingers lacing with her sister's. "The Alpine King." Willow leaned into her, a tremor of excitement, not fear, in her touch. "He's searching, and he's found us." They were different, yet one soul in two bodies. Sage's calm was the deep roots of an oak, her empathy a gentle wave that could soothe the most fractured spirit. Willow's spirit was the playful breeze, her intuition a sharp, shining blade that saw truths hidden in shadows. Together, they were a balance. And for years, they had shared the same quiet dream, the same unspoken longing for the powerful, lonely king whose gaze had once, fleetingly, held theirs across the border river. Their Omega wolves, small and sleek with fur like brushed silver, whined softly inside them, not in submission, but in recognition. A silent promise passed between the sisters. They would not hide. Their mate had come. Kael was already moving. The calm king was gone, stripped away by the primal urgency of the bond. He didn't call his guards. He didn't summon his beta. This was not a matter for politics. It was a claiming. He shifted on the run, his bones reforming in midair, clothes shredding as a wolf of immense size, and jet-black fur hit the ground. His paws tore the earth as he descended the mountain, a shadow streaking through the trees, driven by a compass pointing straight to the source of the jasmine and rain scent. He crossed the shallow river marking the border, the water flashing icy around his legs. Moonwater sentries, catching his scent and his terrifying purpose, melted back into the trees. None dared challenge the Alpine King in this state. The cottage came into view, a soft glow in the dark, and there, on the porch, they stood, side by side, waiting. Sage wore a simple linen dress, her auburn hair a cascade over her shoulders, her gaze steady and open. Willow stood a half-step forward, her posture defiant yet welcoming, her eyes alight with a knowing spark. Kael shifted back to his human form, bare and powerful in the moonlight, his chest heaving. The world narrowed to the two women before him. The bond roared, a triple-strand cord snapping taut between their souls. He saw not two separate beings, but the two halves of his own completion. He took a step forward, his voice a graveled echo of the howl still in his throat. "You knew." It wasn't a question. Sage nodded, a soft smile touching her lips. Willow's chin lifted. "We've always known, Kael," she said, speaking his name for the first time, the sound a balm on his raw spirit. He closed the distance, the heat of them washing over him. He reached out, one calloused hand cradling Sage's cheek, the other threading into Willow's hair. A twin shudder of pleasure ran through all three of them. "You are mine," he vowed, the words an edict of the heart. "And I am yours, from this moon until the last." But as he spoke, A horn blast, sharp and alarmed, shattered the night from the direction of the Moonwater Alpha House. The ritual of claiming was not yet complete, and their pack, his pack, the world beyond this sacred circle, would not let this pass without a challenge. The king had found his Lunas, but now he would have to fight to bring them home. The horn's echo was a splash of cold water on the raw, sacred heat between them. Kale's head snapped toward the sound, a growl building deep in his chest. His hands, so gentle on their skin, tightened for a fraction of a second, a possessive, protective reflex. Sage felt the shift in him, the king crashing back over the mate. She placed her hand over his where it rested against her cheek. "They're afraid," she said, her voice a calm pool in the sudden tension. Her empathy reached out, sensing the ripples of panic from the Moonwater wolves. Willow's eyes narrowed, looking past Kale's shoulder into the dark trees. "They're not just afraid for us. They're afraid of you, of what this means." Footfalls pounded the earth. Torchlight soon flickered between the trunks, and a dozen Moonwater warriors emerged into the clearing, led by their alpha, Corbin. He was a broad, stern man, his face etched with concern and affront. His gaze swept over the intimate scene on the porch, his lips thinning. "King Kale," Corbin's voice was tight, formal. "You cross borders unannounced. You approach members of my pack under a moon, not meant for claiming. This is a breach." Kyle turned, slowly, deliberately placing his body between the twins and the newcomers. He didn't bother with modesty. His nakedness was a testament to the primal truth of the moment. Power radiated from him, not as a threat, but as a simple, immovable fact. "There is no breach, Corbin." Kale's voice rolled like distant thunder. "There is only fate. The moon has spoken. The bond is here. It is in the air, in the blood. Do you deny it?" The warriors shuffled. Every wolf present could feel it, the dense, tangled web of destiny connecting the three souls on the porch. It was undeniable. Corbin's jaw worked. "They are Omegas of Moonwater. Their safety, their future, is my responsibility. This dual bond? It is unheard of. How can a king have two Lunas? What stability can there be?" His question was political, practical, and it hung in the air. It was Willow who answered. She stepped forward, not around Kale, but to stand flush against his side, her shoulder touching his arm. Sage moved to his other side, completing the picture. "The bond isn't between him and one, and him and the other," Willow said, her voice clear and sharp. "It's between all three. It's a circle. We are his, and he is ours, and we are each other's. It is not division, it is completion." Sage nodded, her gaze soft on Corbin. "You have been a good alpha, Corbin. You protected us when we were orphaned. But our wolves have never howled for this pack. They have been waiting, listening for the howl from the mountain." Kale felt their words settle into his soul, sealing a truth he already knew. He looked at Corbin, his stance unyielding but his tone offering a thread of respect. "I do not take them as spoils. I claim them as the heart of my kingdom. They will be cherished. They will be Lunas, in every sense. Their safety will be the duty of every Alpine wolf, starting with me." Corbin saw the truth. He saw the way the twins leaned into Kale's strength, not in weakness, but in unity. He saw the ferocious devotion in the king's eyes. To fight this was to fight the moon herself. He lowered his torch, the fight draining from his shoulders. "A formal petition to the Council of Alphas will be required, for record's sake." "It will be done," Kale agreed. But as the tension seemed to ease, a new scent cut through the night, acrid, chemical, wrong. It came from the deep woods behind the cottage, not from the Moonwater wolves. Kale's senses spiked. "What is that?" Before Corbin could answer, a pained yelp erupted from the tree line, followed by a guttural snarl that was all predator, no wolf. A Moonwater sentry stumbled into the clearing, his arm bleeding from 3 deep, parallel gashes. "Corbin, hunters! They've got silver traps and something else, something on their blades!" Chaos erupted. Corbin barked orders, his warriors shifting, preparing to defend their border. Kale moved. In a blur, he was inside the cottage. Returning with a blanket secured around his hips and a relentless fire in his eyes, he looked at Sage and Willow. "Inside. Lock the door." They didn't move. Sage's eyes were closed, her face pale. "They're in pain. The wolves in the woods. They're terrified of the metal. Willow's gaze was fixed on the dark forest, her pupils dilated. 3 men. Southridge. They're not just hunting. They're studying. Taking notes. Her uncanny intuition laid out the threat like a map. Kale stared at them, seeing not helpless Omegas, but formidable allies. A plan solidified instantly. Willow. Guide Corbin to their position. Sage. You're with me. Your gift can calm the wounded. Keep them from panicking. It was a command. But his voice held a request. A trust he placed in them wholly. Without hesitation, Willow turned to Corbin, her voice authoritative. Send your fastest 2 with me. We'll flank them. Corbin, stunned by the direct order from an Omega, simply nodded. Sage took Kale's outstretched hand. Her touch sent a wave of serene strength through him, quieting the rage of his wolf, focusing it into a razor's edge. As they moved toward the trees, Kale shifted again, the black wolf emerging. Sage kept her hand buried in the fur at his scruff, her own small silver wolf shimmering just beneath her skin, ready. She wasn't a warrior, but she was a healer, and tonight, that was a different kind of weapon. The hunt was on. But as Kale plunged into the darkness, the twin bonds thrumming in his chest, he realized the true test had begun. He came to claim his mates. And now, he would fight alongside them. The first challenge to their triad had arrived not from rival packs, but from the mortal world that hated their kind. And it would forge their bond in fire and blood before the night was through. The forest was a chaos of snarls, panicked yelps, and the rotten sweet scent of wolfsbane. Kale, a streak of obsidian fury, moved with a predator's precision, but his focus was split apart of him, forever tethered to the gentle hand on his fur. Sage matched his stride, her breathing steady, her empathy unfurled like a wide, silken net, catching the jagged edges of fear from the wounded Moonwater wolves. She sent back waves of calm, a subliminal whisper. Be still, help comes. A young warrior, caught in a cruel silver-jawed trap, stopped his frantic thrashing. His pained whines softened, his eyes glazing with a forced tranquility that allowed Kale to snap the vile mechanism apart. Willow's voice, sharp and clear, cut through the mental fog to Kale. They've turned, they're moving toward the river pass, they have a crate. Kale didn't question the psychic thread that had seamlessly woven between their 3 minds. He relayed the command to Corbin through a sharp bark. The hunt pivoted. They cornered the hunters at the rocky pass. 3 men in tactical gear, their faces masked. One holding a silver-lined net, another a tranquilizer rifle dripping with black liquid. The third clutched a reinforced case. The black one, it's the Alpha. One hissed, raising his rifle. A roar of pure fury erupted from Kale, shaking the very trees. But before he could launch himself, a small, silver form shot past him. Willow had shifted. Her Omega wolf was sleek and fast, a phantom in the dappled moonlight. She didn't attack the men. She streaked toward the one with the case, a blur of motion, and snatched it from his grip with her teeth before darting away. It was a perfect, distracting feint. As the hunters spun toward her, Kale struck. He took down the rifleman with a blow that shattered bone. Corbin and his warriors disabled the other 2. The fight was over in seconds. The case, when Willow nudged it open, contained vials of blood, fur samples, and detailed maps of shifter territories. This was a reconnaissance team. Breathing heavily, Kyle shifted back. He went first to Willow, cupping her narrow wolf's face, checking for any injury. She licked his wrist, a reassuring touch, before shifting back, human and trembling with adrenaline. He wrapped his blanket around her. Then he went to Sage, who was kneeling beside the wounded Moonwater wolf, her hands glowing with a soft, gold light. The deep gashes were knitting together, the silver poison seeping out as black smoke. Her healing was not just physical. The wolf nuzzled her hand, a deep peace in its eyes. Kale stood over them, his heart pounding with a ferocious, awe-struck pride. These were no timid flowers to be sheltered behind castle walls. They were his equals. His partners. Corbin approached, his demeanor profoundly altered. He looked at the twins with newfound respect. You're Lunas. They fight like a single, devastating unit. They saved my warriors tonight. He bowed his head. First to Kale, then to Sage and Willow. The moon's choice is clear. They are yours. Moonwater will not contest the claim. The formal acknowledgement was a victory, but the greater one was in the silent exchange between Kale and his mates. The bond had been tested in danger, and it had held, stronger than silver. As dawn tinged the sky peach and gold, Kale stood with Sage and Willow on the ridge overlooking Alpine Peak. Their new home stood imposingly against the mountains, a fortress of stone and legacy. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low. Sage leaned her head on his shoulder. Willow took his hand, her fingers interlacing with his. "We've been ready," Willow said. "Now let's go build our den." Alpha. Together, the three of them walked toward the rising sun, the bonds between them shining like unbreakable threads of diamond. But back in the forest, one hunter, feigning unconsciousness, had watched Sage heal with a wolf with greedy, recording eyes. The case was lost, but the intelligence was not. The most valuable asset had been confirmed. The Alpine King had a healer, and the shadowy organization he worked for paid exorbitantly for such unique specimens. The Great Hall of Alpine Peak was a cavern of intimidating beauty, all vaulted stone, carved timber, and banners bearing the crest of a howling wolf against a peak. It was filled with the entire pack, hundreds of strong, fierce faces turned toward their king, and the two unfamiliar Omegas at his side. Kale felt the weight of their scrutiny, their doubt, their curiosity. He stood on the dais, a hand resting on the carved arm of his alpha chair, a throne meant for one. Today, it felt painfully empty. "Alpine Pack," his voice boomed, effortlessly filling the space. "For generations, we have been strong. We have been fearless. But a pack is not just muscle and tooth. It is heart. It is spirit. I have lived with half a soul, and you have felt the emptiness in your king." He reached out. Sage and Willow moved forward, each placing a hand in his. A visible shockwave of their combined bond. That scent of jasmine, rain, and winter pine washed through the hall. Several wolves gasped. Others closed their eyes, breathing it in. "The moon, in her infinite wisdom, has not given me one heart, but two. She has given us Sage and Willow. My fated mates. Your Lunas." A low murmur traveled through the crowd. Then, a huge warrior with a scar across his brow, Kale's head sentinel named Garrett, stepped forward. His expression was stern. "My king, we respect the moon's will. But how does one rule with two? Who sits beside you? Whose word is law?" It was the question on every mind. Willow stepped forward, her gaze locking with Garrett's. "You are the head sentinel. Your duty is to protect the pack's borders, correct?" "Yes, Luna," he grunted, the title tentative. "And you," she pointed to a woman in the front, the head of their kitchens, Mara. "Your duty is to feed the pack, to nourish them." Mara nodded, surprised to be addressed. "A pack is a body," Sage continued, her softer voice weaving seamlessly with her sister's point. "The alpha is the head, the warriors are the fists, the hunters are the legs, the healers are the hands. Does the head tell the stomach how to digest? Does the fist tell the heart how to beat?" Willow took over. "We are two hearts, beating as one for this pack. Sage's gift is empathy and healing. She will tend to your spirits and your wounds. My gift is intuition and strategy. I will help guard your minds and your borders. Our duty is to support our alpha, to strengthen every part of this body, so the whole may thrive." They spoke not as supplicants, but as born leaders. The pack listened, captivated. Kyle felt a surge of such potent love and pride it threatened to buckle his knees. "They do not take a chair," he declared, his voice thick. "They are the foundation upon which it rests. From today, they speak with my voice, and their care is my command." He turned to the empty throne. With a sudden, decisive motion, he brought his fist down on the stone arm. It cracked, a large chunk shearing off. A collective inhale echoed in the hall. "This seat was built for a lonely king," he proclaimed. "We will build a new one, wide enough for three." The symbolic act broke the last of the tension. Garrett was the first to drop to one knee, his fist over his heart. "My king, my Lunas." One by one the entire pack followed, a wave of allegiance and acceptance that shook the stone floor. The formal welcome was over, but the true test came later. In the quiet of the royal chambers, the rooms were cold, masculine, and untouched by warmth. Sage immediately went to the large, empty hearth. She placed her hands on the cold stone, and a gentle, Golden light emanated from her palms. A fire roared to life. Not with the sharp scent of smoke, but with the comforting smell of sun-warmed cedar. Willow walked to the vast arched window overlooking the territory. "The sightlines from here are good," she murmured, more to herself. "But the western guard tower is blind to the lower creek approach. A simple fix." Cale watched them, these incredible women, already weaving their essence into the fabric of his life, his home, his duty. He walked up behind them, encircling them both with his powerful arms, pulling them back against his chest. They sighed in unison, melting into him. "You were magnificent," he whispered into their hair. "They just needed to see what we see," Sage said softly, tilting her head back to look at him. "Which is?" he asked, nuzzling her temple. Willow turned her face, her lips finding his jaw. "That the great Alpha of Alpine Peak isn't a solitary peak anymore. He's the mountain that cradles the sacred grove and the clear spring, all in one." That night, for the first time in his life, Cale did not sleep alone in a cold, vast bed. He lay tangled between his mates, their heads on his chest, their legs intertwined with his, their combined scent and warmth and steady breath finally silencing the lonely howl in his soul. He was home, but in the city miles away, in a sterile laboratory. The hunter's report flashed on a screen. Subject A-1, Alpine King. Confirmed bonded to 2 Omega females. Secondary Subject S, exhibits potent, unprecedented biotic healing. Priority acquisition level, critical. The shadow had lengthened, and it was now fixed squarely on his heart. Weeks flowed into months, and Alpine Peak thrived. Under the Triad's rule, the pack wasn't just strong, it was whole. Sage's healing touch mended not just bones but fractures in the pack's spirit. She remembered every pup's name, every elder's ache. Willow, working with Garrett, redesigned their patrol patterns and security with a cunning that impressed the gruff sentinel. Her intuition uncovered a traitorous wolf who was leaking information to a rival pack not for malice, but because his sister was being held hostage. A crisis. Sage's empathy and Cale's strength peacefully resolved. Kyle was transformed. The hard lines of his face softened in their presence. His laughter, once a rare rumble, became a familiar sound in the stronghold. The love between them was a living thing, passionate and tender by turns. He learned the unique cadence of each sister's heart, how Sage needed quiet reassurance, how Willow sparked to challenge and debate. Their love for him was boundless, and their love for each other was the unshakable bedrock of it all. One evening, during a violent summer thunderstorm, the bond revealed a new layer. Cale was in his study, reviewing border reports. A jagged bolt of lightning struck a nearby peak, the thunder instantaneous and deafening. At the same moment, a searing phantom pain ripped across his side, and a spike of terror that was not his own lanced his mind. Sage. He was out of his chair and racing through the corridors before the thunderclap had finished echoing. He found her in the conservatory, curled on a window seat, white-faced and clutching her ribs. Willow was already there, holding her, whispering soothing words. "What happened?" Cale demanded, kneeling before them, his hands frantically checking Sage for injury. "There was none. It's not me," Sage gasped, pain in her eyes. It's Lila. Mara's little girl. She's in the lower village." She fell. A branch, in the storm. It pierced her side. Willow's eyes were wide with the same shared vision. "The old oak by the forge." Now, Cale didn't hesitate. He shifted in the confined space, glass rattling, and was a blur through the storm-swept night. He found the scene exactly as described. The frightened child, the panicked mother, the deadly splinter of wood. He carried the girl gently but with desperate speed back to the stronghold, where Sage, though pale and trembling, was waiting with healing supplies. As Sage laid her glowing hands on the child, knitting flesh and calming the little wolf's spirit, Cale understood. The mate bond was more than emotion and scent. It was a psychic tether, a shared nervous system. They could feel each other's physical extremes, and through Sage's deep empathic connection to the pack, they could sometimes feel the pack's acute distress. Later, with Lila sleeping peacefully and the storm past, Cale held his shaking mates before the fire. "This is a power," he said quietly, "but it's also a vulnerability. If you can feel such pain, then we can find it," Willow finished, her practical mind already working. "It's an early warning system, For the pack. It hurts, Sage confessed, burrowing deeper into his embrace. But to stop it, to shut them out, that would hurt more. Kale kissed her forehead, then Willow's. His fierce protectiveness warred with awe. They were the heart of the pack, literally feeling its every wound. It made them indispensable. It also made them targets. That truth arrived at dawn. Garrett, face like granite, brought a sealed metal tube to the council chamber, found by the Southern Patrol. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message and a photograph. The photo was of Sage, taken from a distance, healing a warrior's scrape in the training yard weeks prior. The message was brief. The asset's utility is confirmed. Prepare the extraction protocol. The benefactor requires the healer intact. Terminate the others. The room went cold. Kael's wolf surged to the surface, a promise of death in his golden eyes. They weren't just after the pack anymore. They were after his mate. The directive to terminate the others, Willow and himself, was a death sentence he would rain back upon them 1,000-fold. Willow took the photo, her face grim. They've been watching. For a long time. Sage touched the image of herself, a shiver running through her. The bond between the three tightened, thrumming with a new, deadly purpose. The peaceful life they were building was over. The war for their very existence had just been delivered to their door. Kale's voice was a low, dangerous growl that filled the stone chamber. No one touches what is mine. We don't wait for them to come. He looked at his Lunas, his partners, his reason for being. We find them, and we wipe them from the earth. The Alpine war room was a map of grim determination. Pinned charts, satellite images, and the damning note lay spread across a heavy oak table. The pack's best trackers and tech-savvy wolves had been working since the threat was discovered. They're ghosts, Garrett growled, stabbing a finger at a city map. The hunter we captured gave us nothing before he expired. Their funding, their base, it's all shell within shell. Willow paced, her brow furrowed. They're not ghosts. They're careful. They leave a trail. It's in the pattern. She stopped, pointing to red pins marking suspected sightings. They use storm fronts, magnetic disturbances, anything that can muddy shifter senses. They're not just hunters, they're scientists, arrogant ones. They'll have a primary site, a place they feel secure. Kale watched her mind work, a fierce pride cutting through his rage. How do we find it? We give them what they want, Sage said quietly. All eyes turned to her. She stood by the fireplace, looking smaller than usual but with a steely light in her eyes. Me, or the idea of me. No, Kale's refusal was instantaneous, absolute. Not as bait, she clarified, moving to the table. As a signal, if their whole goal is to study my healing, they'll have equipment to detect supernatural energy signatures, right? What if I amplified mine? In a controlled way, like a lighthouse pulse. Willow could try to sense the direction of their attention, their hunger. It was a brilliant, terrifying plan. It relied entirely on the unique facets of their triad, Sage's power, Willow's intuition, and Kale's strength to protect them. For 3 nights, they prepared. On the night of the hunter's moon, when the lunar energy was potent and wild, they put it into action. They chose a remote, sacred clearing high in the Alpine territory, ringed with ancient stones. The entire pack guard was deployed in concealed, wide perimeter. Sage stood in the center of the clearing, barefoot on the cool earth. Kale and Willow stood flanking her, hands on her shoulders, their touch a conduit and an anchor. Ready, my heart? Kale murmured. She nodded, closing her eyes. She began not with a burst, but with a slow, building resonance. She thought of the pack's joy, of a pup's first shift, of a mating bond's bliss. Golden light began to emanate from her, not just from her hands, but from her very skin, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. It was a beacon of pure, nurturing life force. Willow's eyes were squeezed shut, her nails digging into Sage's shoulder. She was casting her awareness out, a psychic net on the waves of Sage's emission, feeling for the pull, the unnatural grab of hostile attention. Minutes passed, feeling like hours. Sage began to tremble with the effort, the light flickering. There! Willow's eyes snapped open, blazing with certainty. She pointed unerringly southeast. It's not a city. It's a false signal. A forest. But there's metal underneath. Lots of it. 20 miles. Black Pine Reserve. The moment she had the location, Sage let the power go, sagging against Kale. He caught her, holding her close as the light faded. The beacon was extinguished, but they had lit it, and something had seen it. Deep under the condemned forestry reserve of Black Pine, in a state-of-the-art subterranean lab, alarms had softly chimed. A technician stared at a screen spiking with incredible biotic data. "Sir," he called, voice hushed. "We've got a reading. Off the scale. It's the subject S signature. And it's broadcasting." The man in the white coat, known only as the benefactor, studied the pulsing glyph on the monitor, a cold smile touching his lips. "Good. They're playing. Trace the vector, and send the cleanup team. It's time to collect our asset and sterilize the experiment." Back in the clearing, as Kale carried an exhausted Sage toward home, a new scent reached Garrett on the outermost perimeter. Not human. Wolf. But wrong. Metallic. Artificial. It was coming from the north, a different direction entirely from the location Willow had pinpointed. He radioed Kale, voice tense. "King. We have multiple inbound hostiles. Wolf forms, but their scent is corrupted. They're fast. They're not heading for the clearing. They're on a direct vector for the stronghold." Kale's blood ran cold. The beacon had worked, but they had been anticipated. The extraction protocol wasn't a snatch team coming for Sage in the wild. It was a diversionary strike on their home, to draw their forces away, leaving the true prize vulnerable. They were smarter and more ruthless than he had imagined. He looked at Sage in his arms, at Willow's determined face. The stronghold held the packs vulnerable. The pups, the elders, their future. "Garrett," Kale said, his voice the calm of the eye of a hurricane. "Hold them. We are coming." The race was on a race to defend their home, to protect their heart, and to outthink an enemy that wanted to tear their world apart. The Alpine stronghold was no longer just a home. It was a fortress under silent siege. Kale, Sage, and Willow raced back, the wind screaming past them. Kale carried Sage, who was recovering her strength, while Willow ran in her sleek wolf form alongside, her mind linked to his. "They're testing our defenses," Willow's thought came, sharp and clear. "Drawing the warriors out to the perimeter so a smaller, elite team can slip through for the real target." "Sage," Kale thought back, the bond allowing a seamless three-way communication. "Can you feel the pack's fear?" Sage's voice was a whisper in his mind, tinged with effort but clear. "Yes. It's concentrated in the nursery wing. They're terrified, but holding. Mara is there. She's a rock." They burst into the main courtyard from a rear entrance to find controlled chaos. Garrett was directing warriors to the walls where unearthly snarls echoed. The corrupted wolves, their eyes glowing with a faint, sickly green, their hides patchy and smelling of chemicals and ozone, were scrambling up the sheer stone with unnatural agility. "They're enhanced," Garrett snarled, firing a crossbow loaded with a silver-tipped bolt. It struck one in the shoulder, and the beast howled, not with pain, but with distorted rage, and kept climbing. Kale set Sage down gently. "Get to the nursery. Fortify the spirit of our people. That is your battlefield." He kissed her fiercely. Then he turned to Willow. "The walls are yours. See what they don't want us to see." They moved without another word. Sage ran for the inner keep, her gentle light already calling to the frightened hearts within. Willow shifted and bounded up the stone steps to the ramparts, her senses piercing the night. Kale shifted, the majestic black wolf leaping onto the battlements with a roar that shook the very stones. He became a whirlwind of destruction, meeting the first enhanced wolf at the crest of the wall. Its strength was shocking, nearly a match for his own. But it fought without soul, without strategy. It was all frenzied attack. Kale used its rage against it, luring it in and severing its spine with a brutal, precise bite. But there were too many. For every one he felled, two more seemed to appear, swarming from the dark forest. On the rampart, Willow dodged a slashing claw. She wasn't a brawler, but she was a phantom. She darted between legs, tripping, distracting, leading pursuers into the paths of Alpine warriors. And her mind was working, analyzing. The green glow, it pulses, like a signal. They're not independent. They're being driven. She howled, a specific pitch meant for Kale's ears alone. "They're linked. There's a controller. Find the one that doesn't fight, the one that watches." Kale heard her. He disengaged from a pair of attackers, his gaze sweeping the tree line below. And he saw it. A larger, darker wolf, standing separate on a rocky outcrop. Its muzzle was raised, not to howl, but as if scenting the air, its glowing eyes fixed on the stronghold. A faint, almost invisible collar gleamed around its neck. The pack leader, the receiver. With a defiant roar, Kyle launched himself from the wall. He hit the ground and charged, a black meteor aimed at the outcrop. Enhanced wolves threw themselves in his path. He plowed through them, a creature of pure, mate-defending fury. Inside the nursery, Sage had gathered the pups and their mothers. The air was thick with palpable fear. She sat among them, holding 2 trembling pups, and began to hum. It was an old, wordless Omega lullaby. As she hummed, her healing light gently pulsed from her, not to mend bodies, but to soothe souls. The golden warmth filled the room, pushing back the cold terror. Whimpers quieted, heartbeats slowed. The children curled into her light, and their mothers, feeling the calm, straightened their backs, grabbing improvised weapons, fire pokers, heavy stools, their eyes hardening. Sage had turned a panicked room into a sanctuary of formidable resolve. On the outcrop, Kale faced the controller wolf. It was bigger than the others, its intelligence chilling. It didn't charge. It circled, trying to herd Kale toward a cliff edge. Kale felt a strange, invasive pressure at the edges of his mind, an attempt to spark confusion, to mute his rage. But his mind was not his alone. It was shielded by the twin bonds of his mates. He felt Willow's sharp focus, a blade cutting through the mental fog. He felt Sage's serene strength, an immovable anchor, with a clarity that was theirs together. He feinted left, then dove right, his powerful jaws closing not on the wolf's throat, but on the metallic collar around its neck. He crushed it with a single, mighty crunch of his teeth. A wave of visible energy erupted from the collar. The controller wolf dropped, stunned. All around the stronghold, the enhanced wolves faltered. The eerie green glow in their eyes sputtered and died. Confusion replaced mindless aggression. They became just wolves lost, sick wolves. The Alpine warriors quickly subdued them. Silence fell, broken only by heavy panting and the moans of the wounded. Kale shifted back, bleeding from a dozen gashes, and looked up at his stronghold. On the wall, Willow shifted back, giving him a tired, triumphant nod. From a high window in the keep, he saw a soft, golden light emanating Sage's light. His heart swelled. They had held together. He dragged the dazed controller wolf back. "Interrogate this one," he told Garrett. "Find the source of the collars." But the victory was bitter. They had defended their den, but the enemy had shown a terrifying new capability. They could turn wolves into puppets. And as Kale held his mates close in the aftermath, he knew this was only the beginning. The benefactor had played his first major hand and lost his pieces. He would be back, with something worse. The battle for the stronghold was over. The war for their kind was just beginning. The captured wolf, once the collar was removed, was just a broken, terrified delta from a disbanded northern pack. He babbled about being captured, subjected to painful procedures, and having his will stripped away by the voice in the light. The collars were crude, short-range tech. The real source, the voice, was elsewhere. The pack licked its wounds. The easy peace of the past months, a distant memory. A council of allied alphas was convened via secure channels. The story of the enhanced wolves sent a shockwave of paranoia through the shifter world. No territory felt safe. In the midst of this tension, Sage discovered she was pregnant. The joy of the news was a supernova in the gloom, a defiant promise of the future they were fighting for. Kale wept as he felt the 2 new, faint, beautiful sparks of life through his bond with Sage twins, a poetic reflection of her and Willow. The entire pack's morale lifted, touched by the blessing. But the pregnancy amplified Sage's empathic connection exponentially. She became a living tuning fork for the pack's emotions. The collective anxiety, the residual fear from the attack, the pain of the wounded, it all poured into her, a relentless torrent. She tried to shield the growing lives inside her, to absorb and soothe it, but the strain was immense. Dark circles bloomed under her eyes, and her gentle light grew muted. Willow became her fierce protector, snarling at anyone who brought undue stress near, using her intuition to anticipate and deflect emotional turmoil. Kyle was a constant, warm presence, his touch a grounding force. But they could only filter so much. The breaking point came during a security briefing. Garrett was detailing the grim findings from the enemy collars, evidence of shifter DNA splicing, experimental stimulants. The fear and anger in the room were palpable. Sage, sitting beside Kale, suddenly went rigid. A choked cry escaped her lips as she clutched her swelling abdomen. The Bond screamed with a feedback loop of pain, not physical, but psychic overload. The twins' distress within her, magnified by the room's negative energy, spiked. "Enough!" Kale roared, the alpha command silencing the room instantly. He swept Sage into his arms. Her skin was clammy, her breathing shallow. Willow was already clearing a path, her face a mask of fury and fear. They took her to their most secluded chambers. It took hours for the episode to pass, for Sage's connection to dial down from a scream to a hum. She slept fitfully, tears drying on her cheeks. Kale stood on the balcony that night, the weight of his crown's king, alpha, mate, father, threatening to crush him. He felt powerless. He could fight armies, but he could not fight this invisible assault on his mate's spirit. Willow joined him, leaning her head against his arm. "We can't stay here," she said quietly, her voice raw. "The stronghold is a pressure cooker. Every fear, every worry, it's killing her. And them. Where can we go that is safe?" Kale's voice was a hollow echo. "Nowhere is safe." "Then we make a place," Willow insisted, her intuition flaring. "The sacred grove. In the high valley. It's ringed by the oldest trees, on a ley line. The land itself is peaceful. We build a haven there. Just for us, until the pups are born. The pack can defend the territory. We must defend them." It was a risk. Separating the alpha and pregnant Luna from the heart of the pack in a time of war was dangerous. But the greater danger was here. Kale looked at her, seeing the unwavering love for her sister and the unborn children in her eyes. He nodded. "We go at first light." The move was made in secret. Only Garrett and a few most trusted warriors knew the location. The grove was breathtaking. A hidden valley with a crystal-clear spring and meadows of wildflowers. A sturdy, simple lodge was constructed with preternatural speed. The effect on Sage was immediate and profound. Surrounded by untouched nature, soothed by the land's ancient calm, she blossomed. Color returned to her cheeks. Her light glowed warmly again. The Bond sang with peace and growing life. For a few weeks, they lived in a bubble of perfect, secluded joy. They were just Kale, Sage, and Willow, preparing for their children. It was the happiest Kale had ever been. The bubble was pierced by a falcon, a messenger from Garrett. The note was urgent. Movement at Black Pine Reserve. A large convoy arrived. Thermal scans show significant underground activity. They're digging in. It's not a lab anymore. It's becoming a base. The enemy was consolidating power, right under their noses. That same night, as Sage slept deeply between them, Willow jolted upright with a gasp, her hand flying to her temple. A vision, sharp and painful, slammed into her. "Kale," she whispered, her eyes wide with horror. "They're not just making a base, they're making a weapon. They've perfected the collar. It's smaller. A chip. And they have a test subject, an alpha." She turned to him, her face ashen. "They're going to try to control an alpha, and use him to tear the shifter world apart from the inside." The implications were catastrophic. A puppet alpha could start wars, break alliances. So unimaginable chaos. Kale stared into the dark. The peaceful joy of the grove shattered. He had to act. He had to strike at Black Pine before this weapon was ready. But to do that, he would have to leave his heavily pregnant mate and her protector alone in the wilderness. The unthinkable choice was before him. Defend all shifters from a monstrous threat, or stay and defend his own family. The fracture wasn't in the mountain anymore. It was in his soul. The weight of the decision pressed down on Kyle like the mountain itself. In the quiet of the grove, with Sage's serene sleep between them and Willow's haunted eyes upon him, he felt the two halves of his duty to his kind and to his heart tearing him apart. "You have to go," Willow said, her voice low but unwavering. She placed a hand on his chest, over his pounding heart. "If they control an alpha, no territory, no pup, will be safe, not even here." He grasped her hand, his eyes searching hers. "And if it's a trap? If they draw me away to come here for Sage? Then we will be ready," she said, a ferocious glint in her eye. "Garrett will leave a squad of his best here, hidden. I am not helpless, Kale. My gift is a weapon too, and Sage, her connection to this land is a shield. We will know if anything approaches that doesn't belong. Sage stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She had heard it all in her sleep, through the bond. She took his other hand, and placed it on her rounded belly, where their children moved. You are the shield of all our children, she whispered. Not just these two. You are the alpha of alphas. Your howl is the one that must rally the packs. We are safe here. We are hidden in the heart of your territory, protected by your love and your best warriors. Go. Break their weapon. Their unified strength, their absolute faith in him and in each other, gave him the resolve he needed. He kissed them. A long, desperate, promise-filled kiss to each. At dawn, he left. The parting was a physical agony, a severing of the warm, three-stranded cord. He shifted at the edge of the grove. Looking back once, they stood together, hands clasped, Sage's other hand cradling her stomach, Willow's posture tall and watchful. They were a portrait of everything he fought for. He ran, not toward Black Pine, but first to the stronghold. He needed an army. Garrett had assembled the fiercest 100 warriors. Kale also sent out the call to the allied alphas. The message was stark. Meet at the rendezvous point. The enemy seeks to leash an alpha. Who will be next? It was a gamble, but the threat was too great to ignore. As Kale led his force on the silent, swift march toward Black Pine, the distance stretched the mate bond thin and taut. He felt Sage's deliberate calm, a gentle, sun-warmed stone in his mind. He felt Willow's sharp, vigilant focus, a dagger pointed at the dark. They were with him. Back in the grove, Willow orchestrated their defenses with a ruthless efficiency that surprised the veteran warriors Garrett had left. She had them bury silver shavings in specific patterns to disrupt electronic signals, set up early warning tripwires that sang to her mind, and created a labyrinth of false trails. Sage spent her days by the spring, her hands in the earth, reinforcing the natural peace of the grove, weaving a subtle net of tranquility that would feel jarring to any hostile intent. She spoke to her unborn children, telling them about their brave father. The trap, when it sprang, was not at Black Pine. Kale and the allied alphas had surrounded the reserve. The subterranean base was a hive of activity. Just as they prepared to attack, a distorted, powerful howl ripped from the tree line across from them. A massive grizzly of a wolf, eyes gleaming with that familiar, sick green, emerged. The other alphas recoiled. It was Bryn, the alpha of the Stormfang pack, a friend, now a puppet. The benefactor's voice crackled over hidden speakers. King Kale, you came for the weapon. Here it is. Watch as it turns your allies to ash. Bryn, with a heart-wrenching snarl of resistance that was quickly stifled, turned on his own beta. Chaos erupted. The battle Kale had come to fight was on, but it was a horrific civil war among shifters. And in that moment of peak distraction, a small, stealthy, and highly specialized extraction team using the very diversion Kale had feared activated a portable signal jammer and slipped into the guarded perimeter of the sacred grove. Willow felt it first, a sudden, silent dead zone in her mind, where the perimeter alarms should have been. They're here, she hissed. The Alpine warriors moved, but the extraction team was unlike any enemy before. They wore advanced camouflage that blurred with the forest, used sonic emitters that disoriented wolf hearing, and fired nets of a strange, elastic polymer that could not be bitten through. Willow fought with the cunning of a fox, leading them on chases into her prepared traps. One man fell into a concealed pit lined with silver. Another was clotheslined by an almost invisible wire. But there were too many, and they were too disciplined. Their target was clear. They beelined for the lodge. Sage stood on the porch, a hand on her belly, the other outstretched. She didn't try to project fear or pain. She projected home, a deep, soul-aching sense of belonging and peace that washed over the approaching men. Two hesitated, confusion in their eyes, their programmed aggression stuttering. But the leader, wearing a sealed helmet, raised a weapon, not a gun, but a dart launcher. Stand down, asset. The benefactor wants you alive. The fetuses are of particular interest. Rage, white-hot and primal, exploded from Willow. She shifted mid-leap, launching herself at the leader. A net shot out, catching her in mid-air, pinning her writhing form to the ground. Willow. Sage's calm shattered. Her protective surge was not of peace, but of raw, maternal power. A pulse of golden energy erupted from her. Not healing, but repelling. It threw the nearest men back like dolls. But the effort cost her. She cried out, doubling over as a sharp, real pain lanced through her abdomen. The world swam. The bond shrieked with her distress, and Willow's fury. Across the miles, in the heat of the battle with the puppeted Alpha Bryn, Cale felt it a twin stab of terror and physical agony that cleaved through his soul. His roar of absolute anguish split the night sky. His head whipped toward the north, toward the grove. His mates were under attack. His children were coming. And he was trapped in a war he couldn't abandon. The divided howl was torn from his throat, a sound of such profound despair and fury that every wolf, friend and foe, faltered for a second. He was needed in two places at once, and both were crumbling. Time shattered for Cale. The mate bond's scream was a siren he was physically wired to answer, a pull stronger than gravity. Before him, Alpha Bryn, a good man turned into a weapon, was savaging his own pack. Behind Bryn, in the subterranean base, the monster who had orchestrated this nightmare watched. Cale's beta, Marcus, saw his king's agony. "Go!" he roared, throwing himself at Bryn with two other alphas. "We will hold here. Your Lunas need you." It was the permission, the shifting of duty, Cale needed. With a final, devastating look at the battle, a promise to return, he turned and ran. He ran as he had never run before, not as a king, but as a mate, his wolf, fueled by pure terror and love, the forest blurring into a streak of darkness. In the grove, chaos had crystallized into a nightmare tableau. Willow, enmeshed in the strange net, was shifting between human and wolf, screaming in fury as she fought the unbreakable strands. The Alpine warriors were tangling with the remaining extraction team. Sage was on her knees on the porch, panting. One hand pressed against the doorframe, the other splayed protectively over her belly. A contraction, sharp and real, had seized her. The leader stood over her, dart gun raised. "The stress has induced labor. Excellent. We'll extract the subjects on site." Sage looked up, her face sheened with sweat, but her eyes held an unearthly light. She wasn't looking at the hunter. She was looking past him, into the trees, her lips moving in a whisper only the bond could carry. "Cale." Now. And he was there. He erupted from the tree line not with a roar, but with a silent, deadly velocity. He took the leader first, a black bolt of vengeance. The man had no time to turn. Cale's jaws closed on his weapon arm, and a sickening crunch was followed by a scream cut short as a massive paw swiped his helmeted head. The other hunters, seeing their leader fall and the fury of the Alpha descended upon them, lost their nerve. The Alpine warriors made quick, brutal work of them. Cale didn't pause. He shifted back, naked and covered in the blood of his enemies, and fell to his knees before Sage. "I'm here, my heart. I'm here." Another contraction hit, and she cried out, gripping his hand so hard the bones creaked. "The pups. They're coming. Too soon." Willow finally shredded through the net with the help of a warrior's knife. She stumbled to Sage's other side, her hands instantly going to her sister's belly, her face pale. "They're strong. They're fighting. But we need to get her inside." Cale carried Sage into the lodge, to the bed they had prepared together. What followed was not a gentle birth, but a battle of life. The pups, spurred by the stress and the adrenaline, were coming fast and hard. Sage's empathic gift, usually a balm, was overwhelmed by the primal, physical trauma. She was feeling everything in triplicate: her pain, the pup's frantic struggle, Willow's terror, Cale's raging fear. I can't separate it," she sobbed, arching off the bed. Cale held her shoulders, his forehead against hers. "Look at me. Only at me." He poured every ounce of his love, his strength, his unwavering devotion down the bond. A golden, steady cascade to counter the storm. "You are the strongest creature I know. You are my Luna. Bring our children to me." Willow, at the foot of the bed, guided the birth with an innate, fierce calm. "Now, Sage, push for them. Push for us." With a final, monumental effort that seemed to draw from the very ley line of the grove, Sage pushed. A tiny, slick body slid into Willow's waiting hands. A moment later, another followed. Silence. Then, a weak, indignant cry. Slightly stronger, two tiny baby girls, perfect and whole, their scents a blend of winter pine, jasmine, and rain-kissed earth. Tears streamed down Cale's face as he cut the cords. Willow cleaned the babes, her hands trembling now with relief, and placed them on Sage's chest. Sage's exhaustion was absolute, but her light returned, soft and rosy, enveloping her daughters. The pain in the bond melted away, replaced by a tidal wave of awe, of impossible, conquering love. They were a tangle of limbs and tears and laughter on the bed. Kale, Sage, Willow, and the two new, mewling lives between them. The world outside, the war, the fear, it all fell away in that sanctuary of their making. Hours later, as Sage and the pups slept, wrapped in the safety of their triad, Kale stood on the porch with Willow. The grove was silent, guarded, cleansed. The dawn was breaking, painting the sky in victorious hues of pink and gold. Willow leaned into him. "They'll come again, the benefactor. Others." "Let them come," Kale said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of the mountain. He looked back through the doorway at his family, his heart so full he thought it would break. They tried to divide us. They tried to target our love, our future. They showed us our weakness. He turned his gaze to the rising sun, his arm tightening around Willow. "But they only showed me my strength. It was never just my howl. It was always ours." Inside, Sage stirred, feeling his certainty through her sleep. A small smile touched her lips. Her hand rested on the backs of her daughters. They were 5 now. A complete circle, a den built not just of stone, but of a bond that had been forged in fear, tempered in battle, and sanctified in love. The Alpine peak would stand, the king would rule, but he would never rule alone again, for his howl was now a chorus, a harmony of 3 hearts, beating as one, ready to face any dawn, any threat, together, forever.